According to Chicago Tribune staff writer John Crudson, what Hammer claimed to have found was statistical evidence that such genes exist. Alright, now to break down this argument. One of the most significant problems with Hammer's approach is that he and his colleagues did not feel that it was necessary to check whether any of the heterosexual men in these families shared the same marker in question. Would it not be useful to know whether or not this gay gene is found in heterosexuals as well? Even if only a few of them possess the gene, it calls into question what the gene or the self-identification signifies. Additionally, Hammer never explained why the other 7 pairs of brothers did not display the same genetic marker. If this is the gay gene for homosexuality, then one must assume all homosexual individuals would possess that particular marker, and yet that was not the case in Hammer's study. Ann Fausto Sterling and Evan Balaban, I hope that's his name, pointed out some of the additional problems with Hammer's study in a technical comment letter to the editor of a science magazine titled, the letter was titled, Genetics and Male Sexual Orientation. Here's a quote. Despite our praise for aspects of Hammer's work, we feel it is also important to recognize some of its weaknesses. The most obvious of these is the lack of an adequate control group. Their study demonstrates consegregation of a trait which Hammer has labeled homosexuality, with X chromosome markers and the trait's concordance in homosexual brothers. This consegregation is potentially meaningful if the mother is heterozygous for the trait. In this case, segregating the chromosomes without the markers should show up in non-homosexual brothers, but Hammer presents no data to that effect. This sensitivity to assumptions about background levels makes Hammer's data less robust than the summary in their abstract indicates. Finally, we wish to emphasize a point which we are sure Hammer would agree to. Correlation does not necessarily indicate causation. In other words, Hammer's methodology leaves something to be desired. One also should keep in mind that Hammer's sampling was not random, and as a result, his data may not reflect the real population. Now, from Canada, George Rice and his colleagues looked intently at the gene XQ28. They then observed allele and halotype sharing for these markers was not increased over expectation. These results do not support an X-linked gene underlying male homosexuality. Rice included 182 families in their study. They noted, it is unclear why our results are so discrepant from Hammer's original study. Because our study was larger than that of Hammer's, we certainly have adequate power to detect a genetic effect as large as was reported in that study. Nonetheless, our data do not support the presence of a gene of large effect influencing sexual orientation at position XQ28. This is a tactful way of saying that any claims of having found a gay gene were overblown, if not outright false, and that Hammer's results are dubious at best. Commenting on the study of Rice and his colleagues, Ingrid Wickelgren, I hope that's his name, again, he remarked, the Ontario team found that gay brothers were no more likely to share the XQ28 markers than would be expected by chance. Ebers interprets all these results to mean that the X linkage is all but dead. Further studies by University of Chicago psychiatrist Alan Sanders had also failed to verify Hammer's results and found only a weak hint that wasn't statistically significant of an XQ28 linkage among 54 gay brother pairs. In conclusion, 2 independent labs failed to reproduce anything remotely resembling Hammer's results. So here we have a lot of these scientists agreeing that some of these studies actually give evidence for environmental factors playing a role in homosexuality, and even the very unstable Peach has admitted this.
Sexuality can be influenced by genetics and environment.
On top of these studies, we have the examples of the prison system where some, not all, but some, even if just a handful of straight men enter the system and come out still only wanting men or being bisexual. We have testimonials from a colossal amount of real ex-homosexuals, not the fake ones, but the real ones, such as Donnie McClurkin, who have defeated the lifestyle and live healthy, normal lives. You have those who had early life trauma or abuse and etc., all that kind of stuff. Now, the argument that people would use and say that these people may have never been homosexual in the first place is the most ridiculous and outlandish claim, and is a pathetic excuse to try and further credit the twisted arguments of the homosexual agenda without any evidence whatsoever to back up such a claim. To sum up the hormonal study, it pretty much states, the more sons a mother has, the youngest is most likely to be a homosexual, because the mother's estrogen acts as an antigen against the Y chromosome, therefore giving the male feminine characteristics. But this study fails in a plethora of areas, which I will go into right now. First of all, we need to make note that there's nothing biological about this study, even if it was fact, because there shouldn't be a definitive difference between older or younger brothers who turn out to be homosexual. This study is very circumstantial and not very scientific at all. There's a very fundamental flaw in the research design. They set out to prove that homosexuality was from the womb. They have not isolated whether it is a social thing or genetic. As far as the project is concerned, they used 944 subjects, all male, assuming a liberal estimate of 3% homosexuality in males. 25 to 30 men would have been found to be gay. If the experiment design was functional, out of the 30 homosexuals, you would have a very small sample to work with. In fact, too small to decide a biological link or come up with solid evidence. So sexuality, as far as behaviorally, is socially learned or influenced. So in conclusion, people, don't let unstable creatures like SM Pundits, who has repeatedly been getting his backside handed to him by Epidemic 2020 and I, every time he tries to argue the Bible, don't fall for pseudo-logic and wannabe intellect that Mike Libertarian attempts to apply in his rusty videos. Always do research and question raggedy assertions that make no sense whatsoever, because more than likely it's pseudoscience, as these scientists and doctors have exposed in these sources. See the link of the true origins for a complete list of the sources, and you can read all the information that I spoke on, most of it, on your own by going to that page. And there's a list of references and sources to study on this matter. So, like I said, it's this argument that people use that homosexuality is genetic is just straight foolishness. SM Pundits, Mike Libertarian, xxxthepeachxxx, anybody who tries to use these arguments, they just complete fools. This is Crazy 316. I'm out.